Have you ever noticed this? Your emotions change every day. There are days when you are full of energy, believing you can do anything. But there are also days when just a little fatigue makes you start doubting yourself. But assets are not like that. They do not care whether you feel motivated today. They do not ask whether you are sad, bored, or losing faith. Assets keep operating anyway. And that lack of emotion is actually their greatest strength. I want you to imagine this. A tree keeps growing whether the day is sunny or rainy. It does not wait for inspiration to absorb water. It does not need motivation to sink its roots deeper. It simply follows the laws of nature a little each day, quietly but persistently. Financial success works the same way. It is not built on good feelings. It is built on systems without emotions. I still remember very clearly the early years of my journey. There were days when I felt I was on the right path. But there were also days when I wanted to quit simply because things did not give me results immediately. And it was in those moments that I realized a very hard truth to accept. Emotions are what make people feel alive. But emotions are also what destroy people's futures the fastest. Money does not fail because you are not smart enough. Assets do not fail because you are not hardworking enough. They fail because you let emotions take control of long-term decisions. In today's video, I want to share with you the principles that help you understand why assets do not care about your emotions, and why, when you learn to remove emotion from your money systems, you truly move closer to freedom. And you should stay until the end of this video, because principle number 7 is something I wish I had understood many years earlier. It can completely change the way you see money, discipline, and your own life. Principle 1, assets don't care about your feelings. There is a truth that is very hard to accept, and most people take many years to realize it. That is, life does not operate based on your emotions. You can wake up full of energy, believing that today you will accomplish something great. But you can also wake up with a heavy, tired feeling, wondering whether your efforts are really worth it. Your emotions go up and down every day, but assets do not. Rental income keeps flowing whether you are happy or sad. A properly built business keeps operating whether you feel motivated or not. Interest rates, cash flow, accumulated value, all of it follows rules, not moods. And when I understood this, everything began to change. Most of us are taught how to feel about life, but very few are taught how to build systems for that life. We make decisions based on temporary feelings. Today I feel confident, so I will spend more. Today I feel afraid, so I will delay the decision. Today I feel discouraged, so I will abandon the long-term plan. But assets do not react that way. They do not sympathize with you, and they do not punish you either. They simply do one thing: they reward the right actions repeated long enough. I used to think that if I worked hard enough, results would automatically come. But then I realized that hard work alone is not enough. You can work a lot, but if every decision is driven by emotion, you are still building on an unstable foundation. Imagine you are driving on a long road. If every time your mood changes, you turn the steering wheel based on your emotions, you will never reach your destination. Assets are like a road that has already been mapped out. They require you to go straight, not fast, not excited, just in the right direction for long enough. And I realized something very important. The emotional indifference of assets is exactly what frees you from your own volatility. When you build assets the right way, you no longer have to ask yourself every day, do I have enough motivation today? Do I feel ready today? You only need to ask one question: is this aligned with the principles I have chosen? I once made a mistake of letting emotions determine the pace of my life. Sometimes I acted too quickly because of excitement. Sometimes I stopped for too long because of fear. And every time I paid the price in time, the most valuable asset that can never be recovered. Assets do not require you to be perfect. They only require you to be consistent. A tree does not grow because you like it today. It grows because every day in silence its roots go deeper into the ground. You do not hear the sound of growth, but that does not mean it is not happening. Financial life is the same. If you only believe what you feel, you will miss what is being built. And here is the question I want you to ask yourself honestly. Have your recent money decisions come from emotion or from principle? Because emotions may make you feel good today, but only principles will protect you in the years ahead. When you accept that assets do not care about your emotions, you stop demanding that they understand you. Instead, you begin to learn how to understand their rules. And that is the first step to moving from someone who reacts emotionally to someone who proactively builds their future. But remember this principle is only the beginning, because If emotions should not be steering your assets, then the next question is, why do emotions cause people to constantly make short-term decisions, and why does that quietly destroy their long-term wealth? Principle 2, emotion is the enemy of long-term wealth. There is something very few people are willing to admit to themselves, not because they do not see it, but because they do not want to face it. That is, most financial mistakes do not come from a lack of knowledge, but from emotion. You do not lose money because you are stupid. You lose money because you react too quickly to temporary emotions. Fear makes you stop when you should be patient. Excitement makes you rush in when you should be cautious. Discouragement makes you quit just before results have time to form. Emotions always demand results right now, but long-term wealth requires something completely different: time. I have seen many smart, hardworking, high-potential people, yet they constantly sabotage their own progress. Not because they chose the wrong path, but because they did not stay on one path long enough. When emotions rise, they change plans. When emotions fall, they change goals. And the result is that despite being busy for many years, they remain stuck in the same place. Think about this. If every time you feel tired, you question your entire direction, then no strategy is strong enough to save you. Emotions do not care about your future. They only care about making you feel better in this moment. And that is exactly the problem. I have fallen into that trap before. There were days when everything felt clear. I felt confident, excited, convinced that I had figured it out, and it was on those days that I often acted the most recklessly. Then there were other days when results had not yet appeared, when progress was slower than I expected, and I began to doubt every decision I had made. I learned this: emotions are a terrible advisor for long-term decisions. Imagine you are planting a garden. If every week you dig up the plants to check how long the roots have grown, you will kill the very thing you are trying to nurture. Wealth works the same way. It needs to be left alone, nurtured in silence, and protected from emotional reactions. Most people do not lack effort. They lack the ability to tolerate the slowness of the right process. Emotions hate slowness. They want proof immediately. They want results immediately. They want reassurance immediately. But assets do not work that way. When you let emotions control financial decisions, you will constantly choose short-term comfort over long-term benefit. You delay because you are afraid of being wrong. You spend because you want comfort. You quit because you no longer feel motivated. And then you wonder why, after many years, your financial life is still just as fragile as before. I realize something very important. Winners are not people without emotions. They are people who do not allow emotions to decide their direction. Emotions can sit in the car, but they cannot drive. When you build long-term wealth, you must accept an uncomfortable truth. Most of the time, you will not feel progress. But that does not mean you are going in the wrong direction. And here is the question I want you to truly stop and think about. If you do not change the way you make decisions today, what do you think your financial life will look like in 5 years? Because emotions will always find reasons to convince you to stop. But the future does not wait for you to feel ready. When you learn to recognize emotions but do not give them decision-making power, you begin to build something very rare: stability in a volatile world. And that is the foundation of all lasting wealth. But if emotion is the enemy of long-term wealth, then what can stand up and protect you from yourself? The answer lies in something that is not flashy, not stimulating, but incredibly powerful: rules. Principle 3, assets operate on rules, not moods. If you observe life long enough, you will clearly realize one thing: everything that lasts follows rules. The sun does not rise because you need light today. Crops do not harvest earlier just because you are worried. And assets are the same. They do not operate based on your desires, hopes, or moods. They operate based on rules. Most people live in a world of emotions. They act when they feel excited. They stop when they feel tired. They continue when they are encouraged. But assets do not need those things. They do not wait for you to be in the mood. They only respond to the right actions repeated long enough. And this is the point many people miss. They think they need more motivation to start, when in reality what they need is a system that does not require motivation. I used to think that success came from always feeling right, but then I learned that success comes from continuing to do the right thing even when you feel nothing at all. Rules have no emotions, and because of that, they are fair. If you plant seeds consistently, you will harvest. Not because you are a good person, not because you deserve it, but because that is how the rules work. If you skip planting seeds, you will also receive the corresponding result. Not because life hates you, but because rules do not favor anyone. I realized that when people feel frustrated with money, they are not actually angry at assets. They are angry because rules refuse to bend to their emotions. They want results faster. They want exceptions for their effort. They want life to understand them. But assets were not created to understand you. They were created to accurately reflect what you do. Imagine you are building a bridge. If you only build on days you feel inspired, that bridge will never be completed. But if you build a little every day, even on days you are tired, sad, or discouraged, one day the bridge will appear, not because of emotion, but because of obedience to rules. Assets reward those who respect rules. They punish quietly those who try to bargain with them. I once made the mistake of thinking I could adjust the rules to fit my personal circumstances. I thought that if I was busy enough, tired enough, under enough pressure, I deserved to relax my discipline a little. But rules do not negotiate. And then I understood something very important. When you stop arguing with rules, you start progressing much faster. You do not need to feel strong to do the right thing. You just need to do the right thing long enough. When you build assets based on rules, you free yourself from a heavy burden, the burden of always having to feel right, feel ready, feel motivated. You no longer ask, should I do this today? You only ask, is this part of the system I committed to? And that question creates stability. Stability creates progress. Progress creates results. I learned that rules do not make life more exciting, but they make life more reliable. And in the world of money and assets, reliability matters more than any temporary emotion. If you are feeling tired, that does not mean you should stop. It only means you are human. The rules are still there, waiting for you to return. Not judging, not pushing, just responding accurately. And here is the question I want you to ask yourself. Right now, are your financial decisions being driven by emotion or by a system based on clear rules? Because at some point you will realize that freedom does not come from controlling emotions better, but from not needing emotions to participate in important decisions. But there is something even more interesting than that. No matter how powerful rules are, people still break them constantly. Not because they do not understand them, but because they lack the discipline to protect themselves from themselves. Principle 4, discipline protects you from yourself. There is something I learned fairly late in my life. That is, your greatest enemy is not circumstances, not other people, but yourself on your weakest days. Not when you are strong, not when you are full of determination, but when you are tired, uncertain, and begin to convince yourself, taking a break today won't hurt. And it is in those very small moments that your life begins to turn in a different direction, quietly but very real. Discipline does not exist to punish you. It exists to protect you from decisions you will regret later. Most people know what is right, but very few do what is right when it no longer feels right. I used to think discipline was rigid, forcing, sacrificing present joy for an uncertain future. But then I realized discipline is actually an act of self-love at the highest level, because when you have discipline, you do not have to argue with yourself every day. You do not have to negotiate with emotions. You do not have to decide from scratch again and again. Discipline allows you to make a decision once, so you do not pay the price of hesitation for a lifetime. Imagine you are walking on a high bridge. The railing is not there to restrict you. It is there to protect you from one wrong step. Discipline works the same way. It does not make your life smaller. It makes your life safer so you can go farther. I have met many talented people. They are smart. They are knowledgeable. They have dreams, but they lack discipline. And as a result, whenever emotions change, their entire system collapses. They start when they feel excited. They stop when they feel tired. They return when they feel motivated, then leave again when life gets hard. Assets cannot be built that way. Assets require consistent repetition, not short bursts of intensity. I learned that discipline does not require you to be strong every day. It only requires you to stay loyal to your principles even when you lack inspiration. There are days when I do not want to do what needs to be done, and I know for sure you feel the same. But I do not ask my emotions what I should do today. I ask my system, and that system, if built correctly, will carry you forward even when you are full of doubt. That is why I say discipline protects you from the weakest version of yourself, not the failed version, but the version that always finds reasonable excuses to delay. When you have discipline, you do not need to be the best. You just need to be the one who does not quit when emotions change. And here is the most important thing. Discipline is not about doing more. It is about doing fewer right things, but doing them consistently. a controlled spending decision, a repeated investment, a wealth-building action maintained in silence. These things do not create excitement, but they create the future. I paid a very high price for years without discipline, not because I did not know what was right, but because I was not consistent enough to protect myself from temporary emotions. And when I began building discipline, I did not feel free immediately, but I felt safer, safe to continue, safe to be patient, safe to trust that even if results have not arrived today, the system is still working for me. And that is when I understood freedom does not come from doing whatever you want. It comes from no longer being controlled by emotions. If you feel that what I am sharing resonates with your journey, press subscribe to continue walking with me. Because building discipline and assets is not something done in a single day. It is a journey, and you do not have to walk it alone. But remember this, discipline only works when you do not constantly change your direction. And that is why in the next principle I will show you why people who live too emotionally almost never build assets no matter how hard they try. Tasted TXT Taileu principle, 5 emotional people change too fast. There is a paradox I have observed over many years. People with strong emotions are often very passionate at the beginning. They speak with intensity. They set big goals. They believe this time will be different. But they are also the ones who change the fastest. Today they believe in this plan. Tomorrow they doubt it. Next week they look for another path that seems better. And before anything has time to take shape, they have already left. Assets cannot be built in an environment like that, because assets require continuous time, while emotions constantly crave novelty. I used to be like that. I used to believe that changing quickly was a sign of flexibility. But then I realized that many times it was simply impatience disguised as logic. Emotional people rarely wait long enough to know whether they are right or wrong. They change direction before results have a chance to appear. Think about this. If you plant a tree today, but tomorrow you dig it up to plant it somewhere else, you never give its roots a chance to grow deep. And then you wonder why your garden is empty. Assets work the same way. They need to be left alone, not abandoned, but protected from constant emotional interference. People who live emotionally often confuse movement with progress. They are always busy, always trying something new, always changing plans. But real progress is rarely that noisy. Progress usually means repeating one right thing in silence until it becomes boring. And that is exactly what emotions hate most: boredom. Emotions want stimulation. They want to feel like they are doing something big. They want to see progress immediately. But assets do not reward excitement. They reward loyalty to one direction for long enough. I have met many people who changed direction right before results appeared. They left not because the plan was wrong, but because it no longer felt right. And emotions are never an accurate measure of what is being built beneath the surface. I learned that every time you change direction because of emotion, you do not just lose time, you lose momentum. Momentum is hard to build, but very easy to lose. One emotional decision, one abandonment, one "I'll do it later," and you are back at the starting line. Emotional people do not lack opportunities. They lack staying power. They do not stay long enough with a plan. They do not stay long enough with a habit. They do not stay long enough with a system. And assets are only born from things that are stayed with long enough. I had to accept an uncomfortable truth most of the time. I will not feel like I am on the right path. But that does not mean I should change direction. Emotions make you change roads when it rains. Principles make you keep walking even when the road is wet. And here's the question I want you to ask yourself honestly. How many times have you changed your financial plan, not because it was wrong, but because you were no longer interested? Because if you change too fast, no asset ever has time to be built. Wealth does not require you to always be certain. It requires you to be stable enough not to constantly change direction. When you learn to stay, even when emotions want you to leave, you begin to build a very rare quality: durability. And it is that durability, not intelligence or inspiration, that allows assets to form. But remember this, staying does not mean being blind. It means giving one direction enough time to prove its value. And if you can do that, you will be ready for the next lesson. Because assets do not only reward those who stay long enough, they also reward something else, something very few people truly understand: consistency. Principle: 6 assets reward consistency, not inspiration. There is a truth many people do not like to hear. Assets do not need you to feel inspired every day. They also do not care whether you feel inspired today or not. The only thing assets care about is this: whether you do the right thing consistently and long enough. Inspiration is beautiful. It helps you start. It makes you feel alive. But inspiration is a very unreliable friend. It comes suddenly, and it leaves without warning. If you build your financial future on inspiration, you are laying a foundation on something unstable. I used to think I needed to always feel ready, always feel that the timing was right, always be in a perfect mental state to act. But then I realized there is no perfect mental state. There are days when you feel sharp, there are days when you feel tired, there are days when you doubt everything, and if your actions depend on those states, you will act very little. Assets are not built from exceptional days. They are built from ordinary days, days when nothing special happens, days when you simply do one small thing right and repeat it. I learned that consistency does not create an immediate feeling of victory, but it creates something even more important: momentum. Momentum is what keeps you moving forward, even when emotions want you to stop. When you do one right thing every day, you do not just accumulate results, you accumulate trust in your own system. And that trust is very different from inspiration. Inspiration makes you excited. Trust makes you patient. I have seen many people work extremely hard, but only when they feel motivated. When motivation disappears, their entire progress disappears with it. Assets cannot survive in that environment. Assets need a rhythm, a steady rhythm, independent of emotions. Think about accumulation. It is not one big amount that makes you wealthy. It is a small amount repeated long enough. People who chase inspiration often ignore small actions. They think those small actions are not important enough, but those small actions are the foundation of wealth. I used to underestimate consistency. I thought I needed big moves, big breakthroughs. But then I realized breakthroughs only appear after a long period where nothing remarkable seems to happen. Consistency does not impress. It is not celebrated. It does not make you feel special, but it works. When you choose consistency, you accept that most of the time you will not see immediate results, and you continue anyway. That is a very difficult decision, but also a very powerful one. I learned that it is not the most inspired person who goes the farthest. It is the person who can continue when inspiration is gone. And here is the question I want you to ask yourself. Are you waiting for inspiration to act, or are you building a system that allows you to act even without inspiration? Because if you only act when you feel good, you will miss many days that could create your future. Assets do not need you to be exceptional. They need you to show up consistently, a little every day. No noise, no show, just long enough. And when you do that, you will begin to understand something very important. Consistency turns ordinary actions into extraordinary results. But there is still one final trap, a trap that keeps many people, even after understanding all of this, from ever starting. It is the trap called "I'll wait until I'm ready." Principle 7, waiting to feel ready, is a trap. There is a very gentle lie that people often tell themselves. It is not loud. It is not negative. It even sounds very reasonable. When I feel more ready, I'll start. And many people spend their entire lives waiting for that day. I want to tell you this directly and honestly. Being ready is not a state you reach. It is an excuse you use to delay. Not because you are lazy, not because you lack willpower, but because you are waiting for certainty in a world that is never certain. I used to wait. I used to think I needed to know more, to prepare more, to see one more sign that I was on the right path. But then I realized this: if you wait until you feel completely ready, you will never start. Life does not give you clarity before you act. It gives you clarity after you have gone far enough. Most people are not stuck because they lack a plan. They are stuck because they are waiting for a feeling. They wait to feel more confident. They wait to feel less risk. They wait to feel that it is the right time. But assets are not built in feelings. They are built through repeated action taken without certainty. Think about learning how to walk. No one waits until they feel ready to take the first step. You learn by falling. You learn by getting back up. And you learn by continuing. Building assets works the same way. You do not need to feel certain to start. You just need to start small enough not to quit and consistent enough to build momentum. I have seen many people with great potential. They are smart. They think deeply. They analyze carefully. But those very traits keep them frozen. They do not lack understanding. They lack action without perfect feelings. Waiting to feel ready is how emotion protects you from the discomfort of starting. Because starting always involves risk, and emotion hates risk. But if you do not accept small risk today, you will be forced to accept a much bigger risk in the future, the risk of doing nothing at all. I learned that most major turning points in my life happened when I did not feel ready. I did not become confident after succeeding. I became confident because I dared to start before I felt confident. And that is the difference between people who build assets and people who only talk about assets. Talkers wait for feelings. Builders rely on principles. Talkers need motivation. Builders need schedules. Talkers wait for the right time. Builders understand this: the right time is when you act with discipline. I want you to ask yourself one question slowly and honestly. Are you delaying because conditions are not right, or because you do not want to face the discomfort of starting? Because most fear does not come from failure. It comes from having to admit that you do not control everything. And that is something emotion cannot accept. Assets do not wait for you to feel safe. They wait for you to show up consistently. You do not need to be sure you will succeed. You only need to be sure you will not quit before results appear. When you stop waiting to feel ready, you begin to live in reality. And reality, even when uncomfortable, is where everything is actually built. That is when you stop asking, should I start, and start asking, what small part of this journey will I do today? When you ask that question every day, you no longer need to feel ready. Because you have gone far enough to understand this action creates clarity, not the other way around. But action alone is not enough. Because if you act without principles, you can still lose your way. And next, I will help you answer an important question. If we do not rely on emotions, then what should we rely on to make money decisions every day? Principle 8, principles over feelings. When you have gone far enough on this journey, you begin to notice a very subtle but extremely important difference, not between rich and poor, not between smart and uninformed, but between people who make decisions based on feelings and people who make decisions based on principles. Emotions always speak loudly, they offer opinions quickly, they react instantly to every change in life. Principles are different, they speak slowly, they do not argue. But if you listen long enough, you realize they always point in the right direction. I spent many years living with the belief that every decision had to feel right. If I did not feel calm, I delayed. If I did not feel excited, I skipped it. But then I realized something. What feels right is often just what feels familiar. And familiarity rarely leads you to a different future. Principles do not care whether you feel comfortable. They only care about one thing: does this action serve your long-term goal? When you put principles above feelings, you no longer have to reevaluate every decision every day. You already decided in a clear state of mind to protect yourself when you feel weak. I learned that people without principles spend enormous energy making decisions. People with principles do the opposite. They save energy by not having to decide again. They do not ask, should I do this today? They ask, is this within the set of principles I have chosen? And if the answer is yes, they act regardless of what emotions are saying. This is why principles create freedom. Not the freedom to do whatever you want, but freedom from the chaos of temporary emotions. I once thought living by principles would make life dry, but reality was the opposite. Principles help me sleep better because I no longer question whether I did the right thing. Principles help me be more patient because I know I am moving in the right direction even when results have not appeared. Principles help me be more consistent because I am not pulled around by every small emotional shift. And this is very important. Principles do not remove emotion from your life. They only remove emotion from decision-making authority. You can still feel sad. You can still feel tired. You can still feel doubt. But you do not allow those states to determine your future. I have seen many people with good intentions, but without clear principles, they let emotions lead them in circles for years. Each time their feelings change, they change their plan. And every time they start over from the beginning, principles end that loop. When you live by principles, you do not need to win every day. You only need to not betray your system. And assets love that. Assets do not require you to be right all the time. They require you to be stable. Stable in how you act. Stable in how you think. Stable in how you respond. I want you to ask yourself one honest question. Right now, are your money decisions based on clear principles, or are you just doing whatever you feel like? Because without principles, you will always feel busy but rarely move forward. Principles do not create immediate results, but they create the right direction. And on a long journey, direction matters more than speed. When you choose principles over feelings, you stop being pulled by small fluctuations. You become steadier. And when that steadiness is maintained long enough, it creates something very rare: inner freedom. But there is still one final step, one step that completes this entire circle. Because once you remove emotion from decisions, live by principles, and act consistently, The final question is, where does real freedom come from? And that is what I will close with in the final part of the video. Principle 9, freedom comes from removing emotion from money. After everything we have discussed so far, I want you to pause for a moment, not to hear more, but to look back at how you have lived with money until now. Many people think financial freedom means having more money, but that is only the surface. The deeper truth is this: you can never be free if every money decision you make is controlled by emotion. Emotion makes you spend when you are tired. Emotion makes you delay when you are afraid. Emotion makes you change direction when you are discouraged. And each small decision like that, if repeated long enough, builds a life you never intended to live. I learned that freedom does not come from removing emotion from who you are. It comes from removing emotion from your money system. When money is run by principles, you do not need to feel right every day. You simply do what was decided in advance. And that is an enormous relief. You no longer argue with yourself, no longer negotiate with your moods, no longer ask every day, what should I do with my money today? Your system has already answered for you. I realize that the truly free person is not the one with the most choices, but the one who is not forced to choose again every day. When emotion is removed from the money system, you begin to live lighter. Lighter in thought, lighter in decisions, and lighter in the future itself. Assets do not make you happy, but they create space for you to live with intention, space to be patient, space to be selective, space to not react to every small fluctuation, and that is the freedom very few people talk about. I want you to remember this. Emotions may make today feel easier, but only disciplined principles and systems protect your tomorrow. We have gone through 9 principles together, not to excite you, but to wake you up. If there is one thing I hope you take away from this video, it is this: do not ask your emotions what you should do with money. Ask the principles you have chosen, because emotions change every day. But principles, if correct, will take you very far. I want to ask you one question and answer honestly in the comments. What was the most recent money decision you made based on emotion, and what will you change starting today? If this video gave you a new perspective, like, subscribe, and share it with someone you care about. Maybe one principle today will save them from years of going in the wrong direction. I truly appreciate you staying until the end of this video, and I want to close with a sentence I deeply believe in. Discipline weighs ounces. Regret weighs tons.